to day 2 of the 2012 Bio International Convention. Bill Sell here with the Video Show Daily, bringing you complete coverage of all of the different meetings, the pavilions, the business forum, all sorts of different opportunities for companies, organizations, and NGOs from around the world. On the floor today, all of the pavilions are active, and in the business forum, thousands of meetings are going to be taking place. So please make yourself available and get out there and meet some of the people, see some of the technology, and get some of the partnering underway here at the 2012 Bio International Convention.
Welcome to the BioBuzz Center. This is Tracy Cooley, and today I am here with Jim Greenwood, who is Bio's president and CEO, and we are at the 2012 Bio International Convention in Boston, Massachusetts. Welcome, Jim.
Good to be here.
So obviously there are a lot of activities planned this week. Tell us about what you're most excited about and your expectations for the convention.
Well, we think we'll have somewhere between 15,000 and 16,000 people come here. They'll be coming from 48 states, from 65 countries. One of the things that has always impressed me about this event is we have the biotech leaders from the whole planet come together. They connect, they talk, they learn about the science, they learn about the policy, they learn about the business. They have 25,000 one-on-one meetings. They hear from the industry leaders, they socialize, and when all of that is finished, they go back to their 48 states and their 65 countries and their thousands and thousands of biotech companies, and they do better science, and they do create more products, and they create better crops and better fuels. And as we like to say, they help to heal and fuel and feed the world, and they do it better, much better, because they've come together here in Boston and gotten smarter.
So since we're in Boston, tell us about biotech in Boston and the region.
Well, biotech in Boston is at its densest. There are more companies here, there's more venture capital here. It is the #1 place in the country, certainly the world for that matter, where NIH money comes to the 5 most important hospitals in terms of getting NIH dollars, tremendous universities. So you start out with this tremendous academic center, these teaching hospitals. Then you have, coming out of all of those universities, small companies that spin out, lots of venture capital to be invested in those companies, and then you're surrounded by a growing sector of large pharmaceutical companies. So all that together creates a steady stream of new science, new products, and new businesses coming out of this region. So the people here in Boston say they're the #1 biohub in the world. San Francisco likes to say they are too, but Boston certainly has a lot of firsts.
And what's on a lot of people's minds right now is the state of the industry. So from your perspective, what is the state of the industry?
Well, I think the science is stronger than ever. The knowledge that we learned about biology and that we apply to biotechnology just grows incrementally day by day by day. And so we're learning more. We're producing more and more products. We have hundreds of products in the pipeline. The last year has been very good for FDA approval of new products against cancer, against lupus, against a whole host of diseases. So that's good. The challenge right now is financing. The IPO window is basically just a trickle. It's harder and harder for first round funding from venture capital. The investors are pretty conservative. They are worried about the reliability of getting things approved in a timely fashion through the FDA. So that's made it tough, but what's important is we keep working on the policy to reform the FDA, to make this process better, policy to drive investment dollars into these companies, and I think the cycle will become virtuous again, and I think in the long run the future for biotechnology is brilliant.
And there will be a lot of discussion this week around policy matters. Can you tell us about Bio's policy priorities?
Well, right now, #1 priority for us is just getting the Pharmaceutical Drug User Fee Act, PDUFA, and all the other UFAs connected to it passed, and that will probably happen in the next couple of weeks. Of course, we are all waiting to see what the Supreme Court does with healthcare reform legislation that will either leave everything as it is or turn everything upside down or somewhere in between. So that will have a lot of policy implications for us at Bio. Then as we move into the post-election lame duck session, there is a ton of financial issues that have to be dealt with, budgetary, appropriations, taxes, and so forth. What we will be focused on is making sure that in the course of all of that very rapid activity, we don't see harm done to reimbursement of our products, because we're an easy target, and if Congress reimburses us insufficiently, then we'll drive less capital and investment into the industry, and we'll produce fewer drugs. So that's sort of takes us through the rest of the year. In the long run, we have a 5-year plan. We're continuing to advance it. As I said, we want to improve the FDA, make it more efficient. We have a series of proposals to do that. And we have a series of tax proposals, capital formation proposals, that we think will help drive angels to invest, venture capitalists to invest, and help the companies in the public markets as well. So we always have a lot to do. We're getting pretty good at it. And I think if we continue to have the kinds of policy successes that we've had over the last several years, that will help the industry's future as well.
Well, thank you for joining us, Jim. We hope you have a great convention this week.
Thank you.
For the BioBuzz Center, this is Tracy Cooley.
This is Dan Terrace for the Bio Video Daily Show. I'm here at the exhibit hall with Chris Yoakam from AstraZeneca, and we're standing in front of the Bioacademic Zone. So could you tell me, Chris, why did AstraZeneca want to sponsor this area?
Hi, Dan. Well, I'm thrilled to be here, and thank you for the invitation to talk about the academic zone and AstraZeneca and MedImmune's involvement with it. We've been working with Bio for many years to try and increase the value of Bio to the academic community. And so this year we got together and partnered with MATO, the Massachusetts Association of Technology Transfer, which represents about 15 or so premier institutes in the Boston area. And we partnered with them to have the academic zone, which you can see behind us here. And indeed, it's been a very successful partnership in its first year.
Do you have a sense of how many people come through, or how many institutions, or how do you measure the activity here?
Right. Well, today is day one, and the exhibit hall just opened a few hours ago, and you can already see that we have pretty much a full academic zone. I've been speaking with the folks who run the partnering system for Bio, the Partnering 101 system, and they've confirmed that 97% of the available partnering time slots are already booked, not just with MATO academic institutions from the area, but with academic institutions from all over the world who are coming here and meeting one-on-one with their industry partners to look to collaborate, look to license technologies, and indeed to identify technologies which can improve human health.
Do you think this kind of a zone works best because we're in Boston, or would it work in other kinds of locations?
Well, I think the Boston location was very beneficial as a first effort by Bio, but we're already discussing with them about what the layout would be and how to improve upon what we're seeing already this year for Chicago in 2013. And both AstraZeneca and MedImmune hope to be part of that activity next year as well.
Sounds pretty exciting. Describe again, how do you think these kinds of discussions will lead to next steps? What are some examples that you might anticipate?
Well, you know, part of the process of getting traction with industry and licensing and strategic alliances is developing those relationships in advance, because there's a lot of opportunity within each academic institution, and some of it sometimes is just finding out who you should talk to and who is the right person to engage in a specific technology. And we think by bringing everyone together here over the next 4 days, we'll create better, longer lasting relationships and kind of demystify that process of who do I approach in a big pharma, who do I approach in a major biotech company to talk about my specific licensing technologies. So
the people coming here are people involved in licensing and the technology. It's not necessarily a specific scientist.
That's a very good point. I would say that primarily the folks that are represented here today are the people from the academic technology transfer offices at their various institutions who are accustomed to doing strategic alliances with industry. But we do know that some of the leaders from the academic institutes will be here in a meet and greet with industry officials from 2 to 4 today, as well as some of the principal scientists who really go to clinical and scientific meetings and haven't ever been to a business development meeting. So it'll be a bit of an education for them as well on how to approach industry about partnering.
Do you see any activity coming from this meeting of going to visit some of these institutions?
Absolutely. I think there'll be a great deal of follow-up from this. I know last year a number of confidentiality agreements were signed, and scientists, face-to-face meetings between our scientists and academic scientists were held after Bio. So last year we got a good kickstart, and this year we're able to build on what we accomplished, and we have the hopes that in 2013 in Chicago we'll be doing even more with more institutions.
Well, Chris, thank you very much. Again, this is Dan Terrace from Bio Video Daily Show. Thank you.
Dan, my pleasure.
There are 1.7 million known species of life on Earth. 2 years ago, scientists introduced the first one ever designed by a computer. And in the last 10 years, there have been over 3,000 patents issued for genetically modified organisms and other transgenic innovations. Within 50 years, we could have more life forms invented in the lab than we've ever identified in nature. We now have goats, whose milk can be spun into spider silk that's stronger than steel. Jumbo salmon that grow twice as fast as their natural cousins. Bacteria that produce anti-malarial drugs once available only from plants. Innovations like these can increase the supply of essential products, inspire new investing ideas, and launch or upend entire industries. It's all part of a new science called synthetic biology, using nature as a manufacturing platform and DNA as the raw material. Pharmaceutical companies see it as a pipeline for extraordinary new drugs and treatments. Energy companies see a route to cleaner, more sustainable fuels, like algae that produce biofuels and eat carbon dioxide. Someday computers may run on DNA-based circuits, and biological paint could help heat and cool your home. Around the world, across borders, academics, entrepreneurs, and even students are working with over 5,000 DNA sequences called biobricks to explore ideas and invent new organisms. The DNA is available online in an open source database, and the collaborative, crowdsourced approach means experiments that used to take years now take weeks, constantly redefining what's possible. Although synthetic biology is still in a very early experimental phase, it could become the defining technology of the 21st century, bringing with it radical new thinking, new questions, and new opportunities. Because nothing has the power to change how we live more than changing life itself. Think about it. We do.
This is Dan Terrace from Bio Video Daily Show, and today I'm at the China program, and I'm with Li Chen.
Hi, I'm Li Chen from Qua Medicine, a new China startup, and it's a great pleasure today and working with Bio and create this China program.
There are three things I'd like to cover. One is the word that you used in your talk called returnees. There's a lot of interest in that of a lot of Chinese students who come to the U.S.
Sure.
What's a returnee?
Right. The returnee means they come and they return. Right. It's representing a group of people who came over to U.S. roughly about 20 years ago, and they came, they studied, they established themselves in their relatively related work, and went back to China and started their business. And some of them become the business leader, others become the science and technology leader, others become the people in the ministry and then running the policy making.
And you're a returnee?
I'm one of them.
One of them, good.
And then the other way, say returnee, in Chinese means 海龟. And 海龟have shared a similar sound as sea turtle. So if you heard sea turtle, and then they also returnee.
Nice. Go back to the same spot, to the roots.
Yes.
And you use the term ecosystem. I think there's a lot of interest in how that term is used in a comprehensive way, the way you described it.
Right. If you think about it, drug discovery development is not a simple thing. It usually requires many things to happen, right? It's just like you have a golden seeds, you plant to the soil, and you will require the proper soil, the sunlight, the care, and then the whole thing that create a self-feeding system that can self-sustain and support each other. And in drug discovery, that's the same type of environment that we like to create. And this type of system exists in the States, but was not in China 10 years ago. With a group of returnees and then the support with the Chinese government, now we're building up this so-called ecosystem where we can have technology, we can have people, we can have policies and the environment allow this biotech innovation to happen. And this is what we commonly say, the system will support the industry.
So this is partnership at a grand scale.
Exactly.
And do you like to use the term supercluster to describe this?
Well, supercluster certainly is a part of the ecosystem, right? And many places like Zhangjiang High-Tech Park, Beijing Zhongguancun area, and then now with this 20-plus national-funded country-level science and technology park, and they form the clusters.
Okay.
The superclusters with all the necessary infrastructure to support innovation. But in China as a whole, those clusters work together and then foster and then creating the bigger environment. And that's where the system is all about.
My last question has to do with 3 letters, FDA.
FDA.
Now, everybody has regulatory issues.
Sure.
You're starting out with a Chinese regulatory system.
Right.
But still, in the long run, everyone looks to the FDA as a model, or maybe even a model to do it better.
Right.
So where are you with that?
I think there's 2 things when you get into the food and drug regulation, right? FDA over the last 40 years and 50 years have done a superior job of getting the safety into the people's mind and then also be able to run the clinical trial properly, and especially using the statistic way of based process, right? And what is missing in this new environment where the disease become more complex and then require a longer term treatment and then multiple treatment schedules, there's the innovation need to be implanted in to the clinical trials. And then I think in that way, both China as FDA and then US FDA need to study and learn and work together with the clinical people and the clinical physicians and then redefine some of the way of developing new drugs. I think adaptive design, biomarker-driven design, and then drug approval now has become one of the leading, I think, the frontier approach by the regulatory agencies, and I do see China is approaching that pretty fast.
And what's the respect for the Chinese regulatory agencies for the FDA?
I think Chinese regulatory agencies show a very high respect to the FDA approaches in the science-driven drug approval and also the risk management process, right?
And one stage beyond the approval, what about real-world evidence? Does the drug work in ordinary patients, not those selected for clinical trials? Is there a focus yet in China on that approach?
Yes, I think now in China, the SFDA have initiated a phase 4 study and also follow-up trials for many new drugs get approved into the market, and then phase 4 trial become a common practice now in China, especially the drug first approved in the US and in Europe, and then eventually get approved, commercialized in China. And then the phase 4 trial was more tailor-made to the local people, local patients, and then make that safer. And then the feedback to the drug development company is great, because then you'll have a much larger database on the safety and efficacy with the different ethical background.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you, Li Chen. This is Dan Terrace from Bio Video Daily Show. Thank you very much.
Thank you. My pleasure. Thanks.
It takes 10 gallons of water to produce 1 slice of bread, 35 gallons to make 1 cup of coffee, 635 gallons to make 1 hamburger. With global population expected to increase by 30% by 2050, and more developing nations transitioning to higher standards of living, regional water shortages and peak water issues will become more widespread. Only 2.5% of the world's water supply is fresh, and less than 1% of fresh water is accessible surface water, with the rest locked up in snow covers, glaciers, and underground aquifers. While North America has 15% of the world's fresh water supply and 8% of the population, China is the inverse, with 7% of the world's freshwater supply and 21% of the world's population. According to some estimates, 1 billion people today live without access to clean drinking water. Global consumption of water is expected to increase by 40% over the next 20 years. And according to some estimates, more than half of the world's population could be living under conditions of water stress by 2025. This water stress could further exacerbate regional water issues and border disputes. This is already happening in the Middle East. Agriculture consumes 70% of the world's freshwater supply, and as water constraints rise, so will the food costs. There is no substitute for water, and the supply of water is essentially fixed. We will have to increasingly rely on higher-cost water desalination technologies, water reuse, and conservation. While the world is not going to run out of water, as these technologies help unlock more water supply at higher cost, water, becoming a more costly and regionally more scarce resource, will have massive economic, ecological, and geopolitical implications. Think about it. We do.
Susan, how is everything? Massachusetts 2012, and we've got the Bio International Convention coming to town. A lot happening in life sciences. You guys have been at the core of it with the Massachusetts Life Sciences Center.
Absolutely. It's very, very exciting. One, it's exciting to have Bio back. It was last here in 2007, which is pretty recent for it to be coming back. And of course, in 2007, the governor announced his intent to have this Life Sciences Initiative. In 2008, in San Diego, it had been enacted and he had signed the Life Sciences Initiative into law. So we're really looking forward to showcasing not only what's going on in Massachusetts generally, but what we have been able to accomplish since Bio was last here in 2007.
And if you pick 2 or 3 of the big things, because you guys have had a lot of different things, a lot of milestones, what would be 2 or 3 of the biggest accomplishments in these years since it's been here last?
2 or 3 of the biggest things is that when this initiative was enacted, Massachusetts was certainly in the top 3 as far as global leaders in life sciences. And since then, we have become hands down the #1 area in the world for life sciences. That's the first. The second is we really do want to showcase the great collaborations into which we've been entering. We are welcoming all of the delegates who are here from various countries around the world. We want to showcase what Massachusetts has to offer, but we want to talk about partnering and collaboration. That's very important to us.
Absolutely. Now, the role of the academic community community? We have a huge academic community here, a lot of colleges, universities. What role do they play with the Mass Life Science Center?
They play a key role. The academic institutions, that's really where the discovery starts. That's where it all begins. So they've been great partners, also a target for a lot of investment on the part of the Life Sciences Center. As well, the academic institutions train the great talent that we have here in Massachusetts. And we know that the two major reasons that companies want to come and have a footprint here is, one, to partner with those academic institutions, and secondly, because they can find talent in Massachusetts that they can't find anywhere else in the world. We have our academic institutions to thank for that.
Absolutely. Now, on the corporate side of things and on the commercial side, a lot's been going on. You guys have been covering and funding a lot of different activities, and today we're at the opening of a new building here in Massachusetts. What's going on here?
Well, we continue to be extremely gratified by companies like Thermo Fisher Scientific that are choosing to expand their footprint in Massachusetts. That's a great signal about the energy and the need to be here. And I think it really reflects the fact that we've got this great partnership between industry and government and academia. As well, you know, we're really happy to have welcomed a number of small companies, international companies that have opened their offices and their footprint, if you will, to the Americas here in Massachusetts. And we have a great entrepreneurial community. So organizations like Mass Challenge, which are really helping us start new companies that we look forward to having grow up here.
Well, it's great to see this, and quasi-state type organizations, so it's really a lot of different resources out there for companies looking to start things. They just need to contact your office to find out.
Absolutely. We are here to partner with our academic institutions, with young companies, with our talented workers, with mature industry. That's why we're here, to make Massachusetts the #1 place for life sciences to continue to grow.
Well, Susan, thank you for joining us here today on this one.
It was a pleasure, and we're really looking forward to welcoming everyone at Bio 2012.
Thank you very much. And for the Bio International Convention Show Daily, thank you.
BioCentury This Week is brought to you in part by the Biotechnology Industry Organization. Bio, we're doing big things. Your trusted source for biotechnology information and analysis. BioCentury This Week.
Looking at the pipeline of what's in the clinic now, what excites you? I'm not talking about particular drugs, but what areas, what kinds of cancer, where do you think the progress is going to be made?
Well, one of the things that I've noticed is once we have some glimmer of activity or a drug approved, for example, in a particular area where we have not had activity, there tends to be a lot of motion in the industry. And we saw that, for example, in renal cell carcinoma in the last 6 or 7 years, where we didn't have any drug development or very little drug development, and then kind of 6 or 7 drugs being developed during a very short period of time. I think we're going to see that same level of activity, for example, in the area of melanoma, and we're seeing that because we have an understanding, again, of the basic or some of the basic foundations of that disease from a biological point of view. We're going to see a lot more interest in lung cancer and looking at different types of lung cancer, again, perhaps even on a more personalized medicine approach, on an individual approach, looking at pathways of the disease and developing drugs around it.
What did you mean by woefully inadequate, and what would be your, what's your purpose in commissioning the report and in your strategic planning in general?
Well, the purpose was to gather ideas from all over the country, from bio CEOs, from patient organizations, from investors, and what we said to them is give us every idea you can think of that would transform the whole system so that we can get cures to patients more quickly. It's as simple as that. And I said, don't hesitate because an idea might be too complicated or too politically difficult or too out of the box. Let's just get all of the best ideas on the table that we can to create a vision of what would be the perfect environment to take advantage of the might of this country and its scientific capability, its leadership in the world to create these new and innovative cures.
You've been in the industry for 20+ years, and you were at H&Q in the salad days of biotech when, in the 80s and 90s, when a lot of companies went public. I mean, that had to be a pretty fun experience.
It was a great experience. The conference continues to grow, even though our firms, Robertson and Montgomery and Alex Brown and H&Q, have all been acquired. The conference continues to flourish, and even outside the conference, there's more going on outside the conference than there is inside the conference.
Absolutely,
these days.
Lots of stuff going on. But in terms of the deal flow, I mean, you know, there were a lot of companies that were getting funded, and there had to be some pretty exciting times as you were a banker taking some of those companies public.
Yeah, when we were all working together back then, we would do 3-4 IPOs a night sometimes, and one after another. So it was very great times, bringing a lot of companies public, and we're seeing a lot of them mature today.
Yeah, and that would be a nice problem to have in today's market. I think we're talking more about like 3 or 4 IPOs a quarter.
Well, there used to be these windows where the window would be open, and you had the window of 1999, 2000, when really a whole entire class of companies went out. We had a similar thing in 2004, but today we really don't see the window as much, and it's more companies being opportunistic that are accessing the capital markets.
Yeah, and we'll also want to talk about the M&A market at some point as sort of an alternative to the IPO. But before we get into that, I want to bring it up with Mike. You've been covering companies for 20 plus years, also at H&Q as well in the late 80s. It's a much different ecosystem today than it was 20 years ago. I think we had 200 public biotech companies.
Right.
How did you go about covering companies in that environment, which was also a pre-internet environment?
Yeah. Well, I was fortunate to have grown up with the biotech sector. I mean, I started out as a rookie salesman back at Kidder Peabody, making cold calls to people at Amgen and not knowing the difference between a diagnostic and a therapeutic. So I, you know, as I say, I grew up in an era where there were maybe a dozen companies that mattered, and so as the industry expanded, I was luckily able to keep up with most of the stuff, not everything. But I'd say that you know, the difference between then and now was back then the buyers were not as sophisticated.
You're watching BioCentury This Week.